Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are taking a really deep structural dive into how communities across California are actively tackling some of the most complex systemic issues of our time. We're looking at a massive state that's undergoing some truly massive transitions. From the delivery room to the state house, all the way to the ballot box, we're going to break down the exact policies, the raw data, and most importantly, the human stories driving change in the Golden State right now. Let's get into it.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, we're tackling the maternal health crisis. Second, we'll look at civil rights and historical reckoning. Third, California's growing economic divide. And finally, we'll wrap up with the 2026 political landscape. All right, let's jump right into part one, tackling the maternal health crisis, policy and personal stories from the front lines. To really understand the policy side of things, we first have to understand the human impact. Take Triana Adams, a corrections officer and mother in Bakersfield. During a grueling 12-hour labor, she relied heavily on her doula, Donna Wallace. Triana said, "I was very relieved when I actually saw her walk through the door. Having somebody there that was standing up for me was very beneficial." For Triana, having someone in that room who understood the medical jargon and could fiercely advocate for her birth plan wasn't just a comfort thing, it was a completely crucial layer of safety. This is a deeply personal story, but it puts a real face on a nationwide crisis where Black women are dying from pregnancy-related causes at significantly higher rates than white women. Now, you're going to hear the term doula a lot in this space. Just to be clear, a doula doesn't replace your OBGYN or your nurse. Instead, they partner with those medical professionals. They're specifically trained in labor and childbirth support, stepping in to bridge that communication gap that can happen between patients and physicians. They provide physical, emotional, and informational care, acting strictly with the patient's values and best interests in mind. It's really all about ensuring the mother's voice is actually heard during those critical moments. And the numerical reality here, it is absolutely stark. Down in Kern County, the pregnancy-related mortality rate sits at 27 per 100,000 live births. That is exactly double the California state average of 13.5. And when you dig into the demographic data behind that number, it shows this disproportionately impacts Black mothers in that region, who are facing life-threatening complications at nearly 3 times the rate of white women in the same county. We are looking at a severe, highly localized crisis that requires immediate intervention. So what's actually being done about this? Well, policy is shifting to bridge the gap. Since January 2023, Medi-Cal has been covering doula services, and as of April 2026, we've seen over 1,400 doulas enroll statewide to provide that essential care. But beyond just the direct medical intervention, advocates are really pushing for accurate cultural representation too. There was a recent panel called From Storyboards to Statutes that highlighted how media narratives about Black women directly shape the public policies designed to protect them. It's proof that changing the story can literally change the law. Moving on to part two, civil rights and historical reckoning, confronting the past and the present. The NAACP has been at this for over a century. Founded way back in 1909 to secure 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment rights, their work has naturally evolved over the decades. They went from fighting Jim Crow laws and dismantling post-Reconstruction barriers to tackling very modern issues today. Right now, they're combating a reported 50% increase in hate crimes in California, tracked just between 2020 and 2024. And looking ahead to 2026, they're using state grant funding to partner and route victims directly to the ACA versus Hate hotline, getting them vital legal consultation and support. 1,200. That is the staggering number of hate reports submitted against minority groups in 2024 alone, specifically through the non-emergency CA versus Hate online portal. That number really underscores the massive, ongoing scale of the current issue facing civil rights advocates across the state right now. The fight for equality is for sure not just a historical artifact, it's an active, daily battle. Now, on the legislative side, California is taking some formal steps to acknowledge historical atrocities. It starts with Assembly Bill 3089, which is a bipartisan law establishing an official state apology for California's role in tolerating slavery and its enduring legacy. Following that, there's a $500,000 investment to install a permanent bronze plaque in the Capitol East Annex. The idea is to have it act as a daily learning tool for lawmakers and visitors alike. And this momentum is also paving the way for Assembly Bill 2115, which is a proposed measure to formally apologize to California Native Americans for past state-sanctioned violence. But look, civil rights protections aren't just about acknowledging history, right? They are very much about present-day safety. Attorney General Rob Bonta recently issued a legal alert mandating that K-12 school districts take immediate action against sexual misconduct. He explicitly reminded administrators of their strict legal obligations to investigate and stop harassment. And considering districts have paid out billions in settlements over the past decade, this directive ties directly into that broader theme of protecting vulnerable populations and ensuring truly safe environments for students today. Which brings us to part 3, California's growing economic divide, the true cost of living and surviving. It is no secret that the financial pressure on everyday citizens is immense right now. Just look at this. 40% of Californians are currently burdened by medical debt. Health advocates have noted that even fully insured patients are facing steep, totally life-altering out-of-pocket expenses just to stay alive or manage chronic conditions. And this level of debt doesn't just ding your credit score, it makes families highly, highly vulnerable to long-term economic instability. To tackle this head-on, lawmakers have introduced Assembly Bill 2123, also known as the Medical Debt Relief Act of 2026. The mechanics of this legislation are actually fascinating. Backed by a $2.5 million state investment, the state would literally buy up qualifying medical debt from collection agencies for just pennies on the dollar. Once they buy it, the state completely cancels that debt for low and middle income residents. It is a highly targeted strategy designed to just wipe the slate clean for families who did everything right but still fell behind due to a medical emergency. Zooming out a bit, a 2024 report from the Public Policy Institute of California paints a really stark picture of income disparity across the board. The top 10% of earners make about 11 times more than the bottom 10%. That's a massive wealth gap, and it's largely driven by asset ownership, things like businesses and real estate. Meanwhile, lower-income earners are spending a huge share of their paychecks simply on basic needs, making them incredibly vulnerable to inflation. The report also highlights a deep political divide on how to fix this. Democrats generally support stronger government action to reduce the gap, while Republicans and independents tend to favor less government intervention. And adding a whole other layer to this heavy economic strain is the state's ongoing insurance crisis. Claire Thompson, a wildfire survivor, captured the devastating human impact perfectly. She said, "The fire damage to my house did not change, but the loss estimate did, and it was reduced to an amount that made recovery impossible." Her house's fire damage stayed exactly the same, but her insurance loss estimate was suddenly slashed out of nowhere, leaving her without the funds she needed to rebuild. It's a heartbreaking situation, and it's playing out repeatedly for families following the Eaton and Palisade fires. So, to force some accountability in situations exactly like Claire's, lawmakers have brought forward Senate Bills 877, 878, and 1076. These bills aim to significantly increase transparency during the claims process. They'd require insurers to clearly disclose and explain any changes they make to loss estimates, and they would impose actual financial penalties for missed payment deadlines. The big goal here is to stabilize a really volatile insurance market and ensure that survivors can actually recover and rebuild their lives much faster. Let's pivot to our final section, Part 4, the 2026 political landscape, the June primary and critical civic participation. As we get closer to hitting the ballot box, we really have to recognize the temperature of our broader civic environment right now. Recently, authorities took a 31-year-old Torrance, California man into custody following a shooting incident at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, D.C. The suspect is now facing multiple federal charges. Governor Gavin Newsom publicly responded to the incident, emphasizing that a free press is foundational to this country and that violence is simply never acceptable. Despite that tension, or maybe because of it, local civic engagement is surging in response to all these systemic pressures we've talked about today. In the upcoming primary, there are at least 57 Black candidates running for office across California. You've got 8 candidates in the crowded governor's race alone, which includes Superintendent Tony Thurmond. There's representation in 27% of all U.S. congressional districts in the state, plus a really heavy concentration of candidates running for state assembly, particularly down around LA County. But here is the wild part. Even with this incredibly crowded and active field, recent tracking polls showed that 20% of likely voters are still totally undecided in the governor's race. In a primary system like California's, where only the top 2 finishers advance to the general election, regardless of their political party, every single vote carries amplified weight. With Democrats currently highly fragmented across multiple candidates and Republicans leading the early polling, this 20% block of undecided voters represents a massive, race-defining opportunity. And that brings us to the end of today's explainer. We've gone through the raw data on maternal health, the ongoing fight for civil rights, the crushing weight of medical debt, and a highly competitive political landscape. The policies are written, the candidates are running, but the final, most important variable is the voter.
With all these critical issues on the line, how will you shape California on June 2nd? Thanks so much for joining me, and keep learning.